Hello, everybody. Welcome to the World of Brickfilms podcast. I am your host, William of AW Studios. Joining us, as always, is my good friend and co-host, Sean Wood, as a City Panther.
And this one won't be all about a film that I made.
For once, yeah. And our special guest today is Walter Benson.
Hello, everybody. Thank you again for having me on the show. I appreciate it. Hopefully, I'll have some good things to share, but we'll see.
What's actually really quite mad actually about just like the podcast in general is last month, like as of recording this, we actually got to our 3rd anniversary of making the podcast, which is just like insane. I really can't believe that it's been like 3 years, and I appreciate it so much as to how much people have kind of been kept tuning in and yeah, just amazing. I hope that we continue for 3 more years and beyond. So yeah, but yeah. Anyway, back to you. Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And if I can add too, just like kind of in relation to the whole thing, 3 years of this podcast. I know last year was great for me, just being able to animate and listen to episodes of this show, kind of as motivation to continue onward. It was this, and I think Frame 100 were the things I just kept listening to because it was so nice to hear the voices of other brick filmers as I'm brick filming. There's something to that can't be matched when you're animating, which is nice.
Oh yeah, totally.
I really appreciate that people often say like that they enjoy listening to them, or they listen to them while they're animating. And people comment on them, but yeah, to get back on topic, I suppose I find it interesting. As far as I know, you've been watching brick films for a lot longer than you've been making them. So I wonder if you could sort of explain your history with brick filming in general.
Yeah, I don't know how often I've shared it with people. I know I've shared it with certain people, but I kind of came from a background where I didn't have access growing up to kind of the things needed to brick film, but I really liked brick filming because I was very much into Lego at the time. I think it was, and I know Penta, you're gonna know pretty much the dates roughly of this stuff I'm gonna bring up because we're gonna go kind of like back into the history a bit. It was around maybe a year or two before Bricks in Motion, so it was like when Brickfilms.com was a thing that I had stumbled across the website and kind of started understanding like that you can make stop motions with Lego. Actually, I think the first ones I had seen had been 1 or 2 of those official Lego ones. Like I think the Lego Studios sets might have been my first introduction, or it might have been one of the Spite Your Face animations. Like I think it was a Spider-Man one, or there was another one they had done. The Han Solo affair.
Yeah.
Is that it? Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. So as a kid, you see that and it's just like you're seeing your favorite toy come to life, and it's very. I was somebody that already really liked animation. Like I grew up on a steady diet of like Looney Tunes, classic Disney animated films, stuff like that. Even old like black and white comedies, Three Stooges, stuff like that. So there was a lot of passion I had for that sort of thing, kind of like that slapstick comedy element and just animation in general. So I think that was just something all that kind of mixed together as a kid. Seeing that got me really excited. And Lego, I don't know, like, if anyone, I feel like a lot of people will relate to this. But with toys, it's funny growing up because, they break, you throw them out, you sell them as you get older. Maybe you keep some for like memory's sake, but Lego was the one thing that was just the constant of like, this quality is so dang durable. Mm-hmm. It's like, I don't want to throw this out. I can just keep using it to build new stuff. I tore down that set from 20 years ago, but I have pieces here that I constantly reuse. Yeah, maybe it gets really scratched up. Maybe it gets scuffed up a little bit. Maybe there's teeth marks. I don't know. But it just lasts a long time. So there's something there where if you're collecting it as you're going through like your adolescence into your teen years, there's something there where it's just like you have a lot of it. You have these tools, and it's like, oh, I want to make something with this.
Yeah, you never want to get rid of it just in case you become one of those adult fans of Lego.
One of those people. Oh no. No,
One of
yeah,
them.
so that was kind of my I guess that was kind of my introduction to it. And it was a thing where I wanted to like do it, but I kind of couldn't. I think there was a brief period where I think my dad had access to like a camcorder or something, and I tried to do something with it. It didn't work. I can't remember exactly what happened. It was a fuzzy memory. And I never really, I basically like went all those years, teen years, just kind of going through watching the community from afar, watching Brickfilmers. I remember Smeagol was a big one, Smeagol Studios. Just like before having a high-speed internet, just downloading, waiting 2 hours to download. I think it was Clone Trooper Down. This is like back in the days of dial-up, so it's like no one could call on the phone. It's like, don't use the phones. I'm downloading a Brickfilm right now.
That's pretty late for dial-up.
Yeah, we were pretty late to switch things up. But yeah, there are memories of that where it was just like being able to see those things, and I think waiting longer to see those Brickfilms too, and having to download the files. There was more of a reward there in waiting and then being able to see that.
I think that's a part of why it always felt like the release threads back then were super lively and got loads of replies, because people had more of an investment having actually had to download the films.
Yeah,
I waited 2 hours for this thing. Better be good.
I mean, I guess there is that. I think we touched on this like in the past, but like I feel like there is definitely this sort of sense of there is so much like really impressive like stuff that comes out now, like regularly. I'll go on to like Discord and stuff, and I'll see what people are doing, and quite often it's people that I don't even like really know, and the stuff that they're like, so much of it seems like really impressive, and it's just like really like these days it kind of just feels like there's just so much like really like impressive stuff. Their Brickfilms and stuff, but it kind of like it's getting harder and harder to actually kind of like stand out in amongst all that really impressive stuff. And I feel like nowadays, as is just like the case with the internet, over the past like I guess just like over like 20 years, like as things have like progressed, like technology and stuff, it's just like our attention spans are getting smaller and smaller. No matter and we can't really help that necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, I would say we could if we took more extreme measures and like letting our attention spans kind of grow longer, but it's a whole different topic. I don't want to get into.
Well, I often like asking, what were some of the earliest Brickfilms that you remember seeing, like coming from the community?
Oh yeah, oh man, it's going to be hard for me to recall stuff, and there's going to be way more that I won't be able to remember. But like I mentioned, Smeagol Studios was a big one because it was just like, this guy's doing Star Wars Brickfilms, and he's got CGI, and like, I think it was when he made that, it was like that trailer that was based off a Star Wars book or something. It was
Bane of the
Sith. Was it? Okay, yeah. And he just had like the CGI bricks and stuff, and the lightsaber effects. And as a kid, you're just seeing that, and your mind's blown. Speaking of Star Wars, there was one I loved, and it was this French brick filmer, and I can't remember. He may not be French, actually. I could be wrong. He was not English speaking. I know that much. He did like a short brick film about some Jedi flying into, I don't know if it was the Death Star or like some Imperial base, and he has this little like lightsaber duel with Darth Vader. Very like, if anyone saw that now, they probably wouldn't care. But back then, I just remember being like enraptured by that, because like the effects were pretty decent at the time. The animation was okay. Star Wars, you had the sound effects and the music. I think he had the crawl in the beginning.
I feel like, given the time period, I think it's a perilous mission, also known as Brick Wars, by a French guy called Zwan.
That might be it. Did he do another brick film about I think it was like a wizard, and there's something with someone turning into a frog. I think it was called, I'm gonna butcher the French pronunciation, but I think it's like Bonaventure or something.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Is that him? Okay,
that's
that was the one. That was the one. Stuff like that I liked a lot. I think I'm trying to remember if Chihuahua stuff. I'm trying to remember if I encountered it early on or I just kind of missed it early on and then kind of came back later. But I loved a lot of his early one gag short films would just like break me up. I think it was Sports. This one it's the dumbest joke, but just makes me laugh because the guy's saying sports. Stuff like that where it's just like the animator clearly had fun making this and just probably was like, laughing to death as he did it, and you can just like sense that in the final product. Oh man,
it's funny. I was actually earlier, and I was trying to think of like a pick for the showcase. I actually was looking through some of Chihuahua's stuff because I almost picked like a couple. I think I really love is it Back to School is great on, and also
I think I remember that one. Yeah,
another one of my favorite ones is Tender Family Moments. Reading is fun.
Yes,
another classic.
That one's so good. Oh man,
it's like just like when they have the library card and it's just a horse. He coughs it up like why, I don't know. He just does.
I think that's that's one of those things where like what I loved about his Brick films, especially his earlier ones, is just that there was such like a personality infused into those products. And it wasn't just to counter just those other ones I had liked, the French Star Wars brick film, where it's just, this Jedi fighting Darth Vader. There's not much personality there, as good as a brick film as that was, comparing it to something Chihuahua's done. I just love that sense of like personality and kind of the uniqueness of that person kind of coming through in the film. Yeah, I'd say that.
I don't know if this is particularly that like kind of profound of a kind of concept, but like I was thinking about this the other day about like when it comes to like comedies, I think in even just like in a more broad sense, I feel like the writer has to kind of like you want to feel as though they were laughing when they were like coming up with the jokes, and if you don't get that, it kind of you can tell. You could definitely tell, especially like when they have like laughed and they've thought about what makes them what makes them laugh. Like they, I think because obviously humor is so like subjective and not you're not gonna like make everybody laugh, but if you can make yourself laugh, I think you can really tell.
Yes. I think stand-up comics are great to bring up in that regard, because if you're not gonna believe in the joke that you're telling in front of all these people, that very well, like you may tell it with like such passion and confidence, and they don't laugh at all. At least you went like all out, and you just kind of like you gave your all to that joke. I think there's something to kind of being willing to fail, like just being willing to fail 100%, and you just pick yourself back up if it fails and try again.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of my favorite films, they aren't perfect, and they wouldn't be my favorite films if they were like something that somebody could call perfect, because then they wouldn't be throwing everything at the wall. So that they wouldn't have hit on the crazy things that work if they were aiming for total perfection in a recognizable way.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think I think for me, I'll like some films where it's like some comedies that are like probably like critics don't even really care for them. Like I think it's Hot Rod is one from like 2007, because there's a point in the film where he like trips down a hill, and they just have him like falling down this hill.
Yeah,
it keeps cutting from like shot to shot. I think it goes on for like a solid minute. And if the joke isn't funny, it probably isn't funny to some people and people get sick of it. But I laughed so hard when I first saw that, because it just kept committing to that joke for a solid minute, and there's like 20 different shots of him falling down the hill that get like progressively more ridiculous. You'll see like it's obviously like a stunt man.
Yeah,
or
and you just know
like
that they had to do
dummy.
all of these stunt shots just for this stupid joke.
Yeah, this thing is like, I think some of my favorite comedies are like films that just do not deserve to be as good as they are. Like I think some of like Jim Carrey's stuff, like Dumb and Dumber, is like one of my favorites. Because it's such it really shouldn't work at all. It really should like completely fail, but it never fails to make me like just laugh so much. I don't know why, but there's like the joke like near the beginning when they kind of they break in and they kill their bird, and they go in and he goes, his head fell off, like is it as though it just like dropped off. I don't know why, but that's always made me laugh so much.
Yeah. Yeah, I think humor is such an important element when you're talking about brick films. Not that you can't do brick films without humor, but I just feel like because of what the subject matter is, because of what the medium is, humor is just one of the most it's most conducive, I feel like, if that's the right word, to the medium.
For sure. And I like the sort of there's a type of humor in brick films where it's like sometimes it'll just reference the fact that it's made out of Lego, even if the film isn't like always about how it's Lego. And I think that's the way it goes. It has some good moments like that where
like the Larry
the Larry
tag,
name tags, like my name's not Larry, it's Bob. Just little references to the printed torsos and things like that I always find really funny.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, love that. And also I love the joke about the guy that's smiling.
Oh yeah. He doesn't like coffee. That one's really good.
Oh yeah, that was fun. It's funny you mention these because it's like hard for me to remember sometimes. It's like, oh yeah, I did make that.
I mean, there is like a gag I kind of feel like I really want to do about how all of the kind of like brands within the like universe of Lego are all just like really basic. Like you've got like you just got like the brand that's just burger and shop and stuff, and I kind of like the idea of like them just sort of thinking, who came up with they're so unimaginative,
I like in the Lego movie how everyone eats a chicken leg. They're like really enthusiastic that they all love their chicken legs. But I wanted to ask, is Staring Contest, was that actually your first brick film? Because it doesn't appear like a first brick film.
I guess on a technical level, if I was technically making brick films with that camcorder, which I guess I think I had made like one, but I didn't know how to put it together, then I guess it wouldn't be. But I think I had done like one or two tests before Staring Contest. I'm trying to remember. I've got to go back into the vault, and think about this.
Well,
there was a brick film test I did with a couple little things, and I had posted it on the forums before I made Staring Contest. So, kind of yes and no, I guess would be the answer.
But I guess you must have just picked up enough over a couple of years of watching, which is
Oh
pretty
yeah,
unusual.
no, that's a great topic to bring up. Kind of like going back into my teens. When the transition kind of happened with the whole like kind of exodus from brick films to bricks in motion, it was weird because I was like a lurker. So kind of like making that exodus over as someone that nobody on that site knew existed, just kind of watching it from afar, but being like, okay, I guess I'm going to come over here now and see what they do. Kind of continually following the community from afar, I was able to pick up on things. And I think one animator who helped teach me as someone that was not doing brick films was Fancy Pants, because there was a point in time where he made a couple different like animation tutorials that were just very helpful and incorporated certain principles of animation, like what was it? What's the word? Kind of like preparation, kind of that aspect of anticipation. Thank you. Yes. and I think I think in the tutorial he has like a guy holding a wrench hitting another guy, and he kind of shows how
I love that.
He shows
one.
That was so influential to me. That is someone that like wasn't brick filming. It was just like, oh, I'm seeing this. I'm understanding this.
Yeah, that's
I
that
feel
was
like those helped people like actually start to consciously think about principles of animation in brick filming, because most people weren't discussing that in brick filming beforehand.
Around like 2016, when I was like actively trying to, start improving with brick films and stuff. I remember Fancy Pants being like a big influence. His videos, which by that point were like, quite a few years old, but they were still really, really useful. I think they still are like really useful. They have some really great advice.
Yeah, definitely would encourage people to check them out.
I think there was that one as well that he did, and I feel like quite a lot of people have done that as well. But his video on masking was actually also really good for someone starting out.
Oh yeah, I think I remember that one too. I think that was another thing that was kind of like mind-blowing to me was, okay, you can make Lego fly without needing invisible wire.
Yeah.
It is possible.
But at the same time though, like oftentimes when those Fancy Pants tutorials come up nowadays, people are kind of like a little bit annoyed at them, not for any fault of their own, but it feels like new people, they just think, oh, I've learned the magical term ease in, ease out. Now I'll just apply that to everything, and if ever anybody asks any question about animation, I'll just tell them, oh, you should try ease in, ease out. No. And we're like, oh, there's more to it than that.
Yeah. I'd almost want to encourage more brick filmers to look at animation outside of brick filming, and maybe not even outside of brick filming, maybe even all the way outside of stop motion, like just go back to hand drawn.
Yeah,
and really study it.
Do you know one of my favorite animators outside of brick film is probably Alan Becker? Do you know that? Do you know him?
Oh gosh, it sounds familiar, but I
he does the animator versus animation films.
Oh, sounds familiar. Is that the stick figure ones, or am I thinking?
Yeah.
The colored stick
and
figures?
He still does like loads, and they get like millions and millions of views.
Wow.
But his stuff is actually I really love his stuff because he actually did a really great series on the 12 Principles of Animation. Yeah, I really recommend everybody to check out his stuff, and also that as well, the 12 Principles.
If we're name dropping stuff, I'm just gonna throw one more thing into the ring. Is the Disney documentary Frank and Ollie, which is about I think Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnson, who were two older Disney animators.
Yeah.
And while it doesn't go into any principles of animation, I think it's a good supplement to everything we're talking about, because it talks a lot about kind of emotion and sincerity in animation. And I think that's kind of the other side of the coin. We're talking kind of about all these technical things, right? Mm-hmm. But if you have that paired with emotion and like vulnerability and sincerity, going into what you're making, it's like the perfect marriage of things. And you're going to get, even if you fail, you're going to have learned something. You're going to have made progress if you have those two
That's
things.
a good point, actually. Like, if you have animation, let's say it's a Lego figure, and the arm moves up perfectly smooth and it eases at the start and the end, and like every motion is ultimately calculated and smooth and eased, it's robotic and boring.
Yes.
It needs to have emotion and character and fit the scene and what they're actually supposed to be doing, what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I do think there is quite a lot about like, I guess, the principles of animation that you kind of do sort of pick up over time, even like sort of like, I guess, is it unconsciously is the right word, but like you do it without even sort of thinking about it in a lot of ways. Like if you just like happen to just like keep watching stuff, and you see how things are animated, like specific things, whatever, and you just gradually get better at it, you start to naturally kind of just apply the 12 principles of animation without even kind of like necessarily thinking about it. It was actually really funny because I actually very recently I was asked to do an online class for some school kids on stop motion animation, and I wanted to kind of like, I did this like hour-long PowerPoint where I was just like talking about like my journey as an animator, and also I did a whole part about the 12 principles of animation, and only really kind of like studying it and sort of making sort of writing the notes to kind of like come up with what I should be saying and all that kind of stuff. Did I realize that actually I could probably work on a lot of these principles more because I haven't really even thought about it, because there'll be certain things like I think the practical side of things, because I was actually trying to apply a lot of like the stuff that I'd already done to it, like I was using them as examples, and I actually found that I had to record some new animation stuff, because new material, because there were some of my stuff just wasn't like good examples of it, and it was stuff like the anticipation and all that kind of stuff, and I realized that I rely a lot on cheating and kind of like cutting when it's kind of like stopping like before like the start of animation, like you'll cut to one thing static, and then the next shot will be halfway through an action, and it's not necessarily like bad, but
that's a principle of editing too, which can be useful.
Yeah. I guess in a way, as long as you're implying the anticipation was there, you just didn't see it, I guess it's okay. But it is quite interesting that I was only kind of like, as I was sort of teaching it, did I kind of realize actually, I could probably work on this some more.
Yeah, I think that's something that every animator, no matter like where they're at, myself very much included, is just like realizing like I'm still very bad at a lot of things, and I have a long way to go if I want to get better. Kind of having that humility, but also that drive to be like, oh yeah, like I got a lot to learn, but let's get to it. It's gonna be great,
Yeah, I feel like there's definitely if you think that you can't, there's nothing to improve, then that's just it. Then you're never going to. You've reached the point where you're not going to make anything better.
Well, I don't think, I highly doubt anybody is consciously thinking I have nothing left to improve. The problem is they're just sort of not consciously thinking at all.
Yeah.
It's very easy to just operate on autopilot for years and years.
Oh, yes, very much so.
I definitely think that you get to this point, and I think no matter what's the kind of like it is like a skill, you get to a certain level where you're actually really good at it, but you get so kind of like comfortable in that, so that you kind of just don't. I feel that with like playing music and stuff, it's kind of like this point where you get to this point where you're actually really good and competent at it. But you've got to really push yourself to get to like even better, because you don't realize until you've actually kind of like improved that how much you could improve.
Yeah, I think there's a thing in our culture too where just get to a level where you're competent at stuff. Like I feel like I'm competent at After Effects. I do not feel like I'm good at After Effects. I can just kind of pull off stuff with it that I need to pull off for Brickfilms. But I would not say I'm someone that is good at After Effects. I feel competent in it. And in being that, like, I don't feel like I want to get any better at it unless it would be in service of something like maybe a Brickfilm or an animation or something.
Yeah, I mean, I think to a certain degree, because life is short. And
yeah, you can't be good at everything, or,
you don't want to kind of like, put too much energy on something that isn't going to be like your ultimate goal, like it's all something that you want to do like a lot.
No, you're very much right here. I think After Effects, that's a good example of using something to kind of achieve your artistic vision, but not having to know the ins and outs of it completely. I think a better example, just going back to animating, like you said, just kind of like becoming complacent in it because it's easier, which is something I've fallen into the trap of very much. Because I think leading up to That's the Way It Goes, I was very safe in the way I approached animation, because my whole fear is just set bumps, light flicker, earthquakes, like I'm in Florida, so it's not going to happen, but like there was things that would like hold me back from really pushing myself with animation. And it's just, I feel like you got to go back to that attitude of like, I will fail, but I will get better because of it. And just really like leaning into that and trying and taking that risk.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that in a lot of ways, when you kind of start to kind of think to yourself like, oh yeah, I have to, I guess, experiment, because you get to that point. And I think this is like the same with anything, like with when you're doing something that's like creative, is that basically you get to that point where you're known for a certain thing. You know, you've gained some sort of audience, and you know people really like your stuff or whatever, and you could, you know, easily just, you know, be really successful with just continuing as you are, but you kind of want to, you don't want to go into like, you know, autopilot, and you want to kind of like experiment, and you're kind of having to kind of I guess in a way, you know, to take a little bit of a risk, you know, in sort of doing something completely different, or you know, just like you know, not saying completely different, but you know, just doing something, you know, done before and stuff.
And I think experiment is a good word to use, but I know for me, like another word that kind of comes to mind is more of maybe growth, where it's not necessarily that you're changing what you're making. It's just you're trying to kind of, it sounds weird to say, but it's almost like I'm trying to be more of myself, if that makes sense. Like going back to Chihuahua, he was just, it's so much of him in those brick films. And it just like pushing yourself to really put more of yourself into those brick films.
Yeah.
I think it's just like animation, what we're talking about with animation, is more of one of the ways to do that.
Yeah, I think there is also, isn't there, like this thing of like, you know, when you're starting out, you're basically, you know, you're going off like who you're inspired by, and I feel like in a lot of ways there is no shame in kind of like sort of emulating someone's style when you're starting out, especially because you're inspired by somebody, you know. And I think as you go along, you start to find your own quirks and your own kind of like style that is uniquely you. And it takes quite a long time to kind of sort of discover that. And it's quite hard because you're basically having to sort of balance both originality and also making sure that you're not losing sight of like what inspired you in the first place. Does that make sense?
Like balancing inspiration and originality.
Yeah.
Would that be a good?
I guess that would be like the. I was just doing the long-winded explanation of what you just said really clearly.
I love that you brought that up. There's I have notes here actually from some talk I had watched. I think it was from Blender's YouTube channel about like the good traits of artists or something. I can't remember what the title was, but he talked about like good theft versus bad theft, and you kind of talking about inspiration made me think about it. And I think he had like a cool thing that he had on the video. I can't remember the name of the man who did the talk, but he was talking about like good theft being like you're honoring that thing you're being inspired by, versus bad theft is kind of degrading that original thing. He also has good theft is kind of studying that thing and really like understanding kind of the thing you're being inspired by. And then bad theft is kind of just skimming that thing kind of on the surface, being like, oh, I want that, I'm going to take it. And good theft is also, I think, with inspiration, it's stealing from multiple sources in the sense that you have one or two inspirations or three or four, you know, and just kind of seeing those ingredients that work and like spark your imagination versus just stealing from like one thing, you know. And,
I guess
the other one is so sorry, it's a long list.
No, I get it, because it's a bit like almost, I guess, sort of postmodernism in a way. But it's like that. Basically, all my best ideas, all my best brick films, are all just really a mishmash of just things that already exist. Like I think, especially I think it was around like when I was starting doing the podcast, I kind of I think some of my best work has come out since then. And I think like stuff like, I think it was Busker's Opus, a film I did 3 years ago. That was basically just a combination of like several brick films that we had discussed on the podcast, and just kind of like, I wonder if you could just do this story but reimagine it in this way, you know. And then Cut and Run, which is basically a tribute to Namchild, the film that I was doing, and it's just kind of like, I wonder if I could, you know, sort of combine several of his films into one video, but you know, guess do it in my way.
Yeah, also with an original thing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's not just about combining several things that pre-exist. It's also what happens when I kind of like add all of these like things that already exist, and then also, you know, completely, you know, sort of mix it up and add my own sort of thing to it. You know,
like if I were to go off just two inspirations from childhood for like animation, Batman the Animated Series and Avatar The Last Airbender. Like, let's say those are my two inspirations. What is that going to look like? I mean, you could be inspired by both of those in very different ways, you know, and take elements and kind of like rework it into something original and really study both those works and kind of see how they inspire you. But yeah, it's one of those things where I feel like it's gosh, I don't know. I'm kind of losing my train of thought on this. But like, it's a thing where it's not stealing. What one note I have is that it's remixing. It's not ripping off.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But of course, in brick filming, you know, a lot of people, they start off by basically ripping off the people they've seen. And, you know,
I think I think if there's one blatant, like, I wouldn't call it a ripoff, but like very obvious inspiration from Chihuahua in my filmography is the brick film I made called Head, which is just this head that pops up out of the ground and just I mean I'll spoil it. It's just a head and it bounces away and the guy like seeing it faints. And I was like, this is my Chihuahua inspired brick film. This is very much what like his influence is been done to me. And that was like my one kind of I guess maybe tribute film or love letter. I don't know.
I mean, I love that film. I think it's great.
Thank you.
That kind of stuff I just find really funny. I guess it's almost in a way a bit like the what they call it. They do it a lot in The Simpsons. The screw the audience joke, where you think it's one thing, but well, actually, a great example of that actually is Cookie Calamity, when you think that the executioner is just, you think the joke is that he's reformed and he's going to just let him go, and actually the joke is that the car smashes into the wall, you know.
One thing I love about that joke is there's a very, if you're like, and Penta will know which brick film this is. I think it was called Moronic. And it ends in the exact same, well, they're not in an execution chamber, but it ends in a similar way where just this car comes smashing through the wall and it's just like, okay, that happened. Random. Wasn't expecting it. Yeah, that was my inspiration, because there's such a like left turn, like you were already taking all these left turns with the script, and then you get to this point where it's like, I guess he's gonna die now. I don't know what's going on. And it's just like, no, he can't take a break. He's got to get back to work. It doesn't matter if this is illegal. You're coming with me. Just ending it on that was kind of my, was my idea of just kind of like being, let's just keep taking all these weird turns and then it'll end here. And that'll be it.
Actually, I guess we could talk a little bit about the film, because I really love, because I think you were talking earlier about like, you know, old, like say like cartoons and stuff being like inspiration, like Looney Tunes and stuff, and yeah. I mean, obviously this is definitely like a love letter to, you know, Looney Tunes and that kind of style, I guess, like especially like the intro and everything. I mean, I think it's brilliant. It's
I don't know how obvious it is to people, but the opening shot with Daniel's head is like very similar to the Donald Duck shorts, where you'd see his face kind of on a bright blue background of a similar design. I was very intentional. Like I even kind of looked at it as reference, because I just loved that idea of just like, you start a short instead of, in the YouTube age, you know, you're just kind of maybe starting, or you have like a short intro or something with words, just going like bam right into the music, and you have that face on the screen, and it's like, okay, I have my attention.
I was actually something I wanted to ask as well. Were you inspired by Got Milk?
The ad campaign? Or
yeah, because I was just thinking then of like, you know, the whole like the original ad, where,
oh man, I don't know if I remember the original one. This isn't ringing a bell for me.
That's like the Michael Bay directed commercial where the guy is eating, is he got like a peanut butter sandwich or something, and he's run out of milk, so he can't talk. You know, it's like in the film, and he's trying to answer this like question on the radio, but they don't understand what he's saying.
Oh my gosh, I think I might remember this. Okay, so if that inspiration is there, it's very subconscious, but this is sounding familiar to me now. When I wrote the script, so kind of the funny story about writing Cookie Calamity was, I think it was like a couple months after graduating from film school, I had a friend who was studying film at the time, and I was like, let's just like write really stupid, silly screenplays maybe once a week and send them to each other and like critique them or just see what we think. And like, it can be the dumbest thing. Let's just do it to like flex our creative like muscles and try to grow. We did it like 1 week. I don't think she even ended up like writing it for that first week. But the script that I wrote was basically maybe like 90% of what you see in Cookie Calamity.
Nice. And
it did not end with that car coming in to save Daniel. Ended a lot darker. I think if there was one inspiration that was really not conscious but kind of coming to me from a visual standpoint, it was Wes Anderson's The Grand Budapest Hotel, just because there was a lot of that movie is very visually, beautiful. I don't know, like in remembering it, I don't know if I care much for the story, but I just remember like really liking the visuals. So that was like a kind of a big inspiration. So it's kind of weird to say like Cookie Calamity was one of those things where it was just a stupid throwaway script that I wrote like 4 years ago, and I never really intended to do anything with it.
That's funny.
Yeah, I mean,
where did you get the mouth animation shapes from?
So the mouth animation was one of those things where I was studying kind of what Sloth Paladin, I can't remember his full name.
Mm-hmm.
Chris
Boyer.
Chris Boyer. Yeah. I was studying what he was doing in what I think was Forlorn, right? Or am I thinking of somebody else? The guy who did the one brick film with the two spacemen fighting each other.
Yeah. Oh, Feud of Brick Hill, was it?
Yes, that's the one. I was studying what they did with their videos, and I was even considering using like Chris's assets that he had given everybody. And then I kind of realized I had like a really expansive library of minifigure heads in my collection, like really expansive that I could use. And so one of the motivations to kind of coming back to brick filming for me was just photographing every single minifigure head I had, like photographing it with a macro lens, raw, bringing it into Photoshop, taking the elements apart one by one, layering and organizing everything, maybe trying to clean up certain things like whiting the teeth out a little bit more so it's not as yellow, but not too white because you want it to still look like it would fit on the minifigure head. So it was just like a long period of time doing that. And then I think kind of going into 2020, I took a bit of a break, and then kind of everything with COVID kind of opened up more time, and I went more into that with trying to get it set up for Cookie Calamity. And then bringing that into After Effects, which, we mentioned like being competent in things, not knowing half of what I was doing, and just trying to make things work in After Effects. Kind of going based off, I think both those examples I mentioned by those brick filmers, just kind of having a system that worked.
That makes a lot of sense though, because in looking at those mouth shapes in the film, I was thinking like, these look like the actual minifigure art style, but some of them have lipstick and there's all sorts of different qualities about them. So they looked really good.
It's gonna take so much work, but I want to be able to like release the assets for everyone to use. But it's so messy, and I'm kind of afraid that if I don't have some kind of tutorial or guidance on kind of what I did, people won't be able to use it. But that takes a lot of work. I keep putting that off.
Well, I'd certainly be interested in seeing the assets, even if it was just a file dump.
Yeah, if anything, it will at least be that. Because it's like, as long as you have Photoshop and After Effects, you can... I think even if you just had After Effects and you didn't have Photoshop, I think you could still use the Photoshop files in there. Because there's a lot of... like, it's pulling directly from the PSD. But yeah, it's one of those things where I think for me, I think it was the Lego movie, and that's kind of a big thing we could get into, is kind of like the Lego movie's influence on like me and a lot of other brick filmers too, kind of in pushing like what you can do with Lego, right? I was rewatching the Lego movie, and I think it was like 2018 or 2019. And I was just really blown away by, like, we're coming back to that concept of like personality and character and sincerity and animation, and just kind of like seeing that on screen and realizing, yeah, that's CGI, but it's still Lego. That's how Lego moves. You can make Lego move like that. Like, why aren't we doing this? Like, and then you start to forget about the obvious answer being because it takes a lot of time. Yeah, that was a big influence for me, was just kind of seeing how the mouths moved in the Lego movie and being like, oh, like, it doesn't have to be this smooth mouth that's like 60 frames per second.
Well, that looks way worse on it. You can't combine something like that with stop motion. It doesn't gel.
Oh yeah, there's one brick filmer, I think his name's, yeah, he's helped me out on a project or two, Raytastic, and he does, I think he's been doing like 8 frames per second, 7 frames per second. He do like really low frame rate tests just to see how far he could push himself with like really low frame rate animation. And that's always really impressive to me, because if you can like put a lot of personality and movement into something that's a lower frame rate and it looks good, like, you've done very well as an animator. And you possibly saved a lot of time too if you're doing a lower frame rate.
No, you don't save time. if you're trying to make it really good, you don't save time, because every single individual frame matters in low frame rate animation. It has to be spaced so particularly. It takes forever flipping between them to make sure the next one's correct.
I switched from 15 to 12 recently, so I guess it's true. Yeah, it does take more time.
If you want it to be like, particularly good, it takes more time. I think that's where people don't understand that. If other people might think, oh, low frame rate, that's easy. Like, you just move it, take the picture, you're done. But no, it takes more time to make the particular movement correct.
I feel like in the end, the amount of time between, I don't know, I'd say 8 frames a second to like 12 frames a second is probably quite similar amount of time it probably takes to animate, because the less frames, I guess, like you were kind of saying, the less the frames, the more important those individual frames are. So, you're having to put more attention on, this has to be, really, really good.
Yeah.
And I feel like it could only really ever work in a cartoony sense, I think. Where it's like a very, it's like, it's not like, you couldn't do like, obviously, kind of goes without saying, but you couldn't really do like smooth animation. I do think that you could probably push it and probably go as low as probably like 6 frames per second and probably do something with that, but
Damn.
I'd actually be interested to see, like, could you get to like 4 FPS?
1 FPS.
Yeah.
The slideshow brick film.
This is a real expanding brain moment. But so you mentioned, like, with the mouth animation project, how like COVID had an effect on it. Did that have an effect? I suppose you came back to brick filming before like COVID was really a big thing.
Yeah, I came back in like late summer of 2019, and then I kind of took a break over Christmas, and then I think it wasn't really until summer that I dove back in again and was just I mentioned Cookie Calamity. It was one of those things where it was like I have this old I didn't, like, you kind of have that brain block of I don't have a good story or a good joke, even like a good one joke to work with that I feel passionate about. So that script for Cookie Calamity was like, it's there, it's old, I can dust it off, I can do a couple of revisions, maybe make it a little bit better. It's still very stupid, but I like it enough that I'm going to work with it and just make something with it. And from there, kind of just slowly kind of trying to make it into a good brick film. And a lot of elements kind of helped motivate me with that, which was the mouth animation, even though it was terrible animating it. Like having that be kind of a motivating factor of this will look good when it's done, I hope, and just kind of those elements of like I was fortunate enough to get really good music from like a music licensing site that I liked and I felt fit with the Brickfilm, and that was like another thing that motivated me. And just like the set design and stuff, I had a lot of fun with that. But it was one of those things where like the Brickfilm took a really long time to make because I did most of the principal animation over the summer, and kind of that fall through winter was just kind of this really slow crawl of like working on all those assets for the mouth animation and just getting everything organized, and then finally getting the After Effects file set up. And it was kind of like a reworked After Effects file that I had used in Wishna, because I had a really simplified one for that, since it was just like I think eyes, mouth, and I might have used eyebrows. I don't remember. Well, because it was the classic smileys, they didn't have eyebrows, which made it easier. But just like there was a slow period of time where it was just getting the After Effects file set up and like tracking everything frame by frame with kind of like a 3D cylinder over the footage. It was awful.
That does sound really bad, because when I was doing mouth animation, I'd usually like, animate the shot and then straight away just do the mouth for the shot that had just been animated. So, each shot was created individually as one thing. Like, you animate the shot and it's like, well, the shot's not done yet. We got to do the mouth for that shot.
Ooh.
So I feel like it would have been really grueling if I did all the animation in one go and then all of the mouth's animation in one go afterwards. That sounds super tedious.
It was not something I enjoyed. It was a good opportunity to like just listen to a lot of podcasts, because like I listened to like going back to this podcast, I listened to a lot of this and Frame 100, because it was just like, okay, brick filmers motivating me. I hear them, like it helps. And yeah, I think the biggest difficulty too with After Effects that I faced was, I think it was stuff with frame rates and previews. And like I said, I'm only very like competent, I guess you could say, in After Effects. So there would be weird problems that I'd face that I couldn't find the solution to, where like you'd have everything tracked up, like you'd manually track those frames and make sure everything's lined up for the mouth animations. Because there's a lot of frames where they're like talking and they're moving, It's like you could do the easy thing of just having them stand still and talk, but it just doesn't look as good.
Yeah, it doesn't look as good, yeah.
But like the tracking would get off. And I'd be like, okay, I try to maybe slide it back around. What's going on? Is the frame rate off? I had a really bad moment in like towards the very end of making this, where I realized that I think it was 3 or 4 shots were exported at frame rates that were like 14.37 frames per second. I have no idea why. And that just kind of like screwed with so much stuff in that file. And it was just like a couple weeks of just constantly trying to get everything working and being like, okay, if I can just export this properly and have because you'd have like the mouth animation would be off by 1 frame, and you get these really wonky looking like floating lips coming off the mouth of the minifigure. It was just kind of awful. So I kind of joke and it's kind of, I kind of joke like the worst thing you can do in a brick film is have them talk and use mouth animation, because if I had somehow told this story without dialogue, I would have made it in like 1/10 the time probably. And I think that ties back into kind of the topic of sincerity of animation, and kind of like being able to really use emotion and personality and communicating through the movements of those minifigures or non-minifigures if it's something brick built, because then it's like, oh, I don't need words. I mean, yeah, it helps for certain things, but like I'm communicating something that doesn't require so much effort and time outside of the animation aspect of it being difficult.
I was just reminded of Mr. Sir and the Unexpected Encounter, that had a brick-built character. His mouth moved with brick movements. That's really funny.
Oh, yeah, I think it was my first THAC. That was a long time ago. I remember making that and being very disappointed, because like I wasn't aware really like how one builds brick built characters that stay put together. So as like a figure, he'd constantly fall apart because I just wasn't using the right joints, like the right kind of reinforcements to keep him together. But yeah, I think there's something there with like like you want to put in the effort and you want to be able to fail and like try your hardest. But I think after Cookie Calamity, I just realized like I want to be able to make good things, but do I have to do it with dialogue?
But of course, when you're animating and you know that you're going to do digital mouths later, you can get away with having the figures move less and occasionally just stay still for a while. But while you're animating it feels so bad. You take a few frames where they're not moving. You're like, oh, they have to move again.
There's guilt. Yeah. There's so much guilt that keeps me from doing that. I'm like, I can't. It's just gonna look bad. I can't.
But then once you get the digital mouth on them and it takes ages to track it because you had them move so much because you felt bad about it, then you're looking at it like, I could have gotten away with having them move a bit less.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, as somebody that's like always done like mouth animation, making a dialogue-free like SAC or brawl entry, it definitely has a lot of benefits because you kind of just like. Oh god, when I was doing Loop TV, my brawl entry last year, I spent a long time on animation, because I just had like no concept for like the first like 24 hours. I was like really lost, and then I kind of like the very end of that first day, I was like, oh wait, yeah, I've got a great idea, and I kind of started writing things down. So I was already a bit behind then, and I spent like a day doing, like set building or whatever. And I spent quite a lot of time in that kind of the process of doing that. So when it came to like, the post production, the editing side of things, I only really had like the last like day and a half, and I was starting to do the mouse animation. I was like, I don't want to, because usually like if I'm doing a brick film over like several months or even years, like it is for some of my stuff, it's like I'll do the mouse animation over time, but like when I'm doing like a brawl, I'm having to just do like all the animation at once, and I really just didn't feel like I wanted to. After a week of animating, I didn't want to just like then do all the mouth animation. It's like, nah, you know what? There's not going to be any mouth animation in this one. And also I think I picked like the worst mouth to try and animate. But as I after I uploading it, I was like, oh, it's a shame I wasn't able to do that. And then no one commented on it on the fact that it had no mouth animations. Like no one noticed. I was like, oh, okay. Whatever.
I mean, yeah, I feel like as spoiled as we are as viewers these days with like the insane amount of like stuff that's being animated and made, it's nice to know that stuff like that is just like, okay, there's no mouth animation, that's fine, I'm fine with that, like
yeah,
gives me hope.
Yeah, but I am always impressed by brawl entries that have mouth animation, because I know I'd never do that.
Oh gosh, no.
I mean, actually, mouth animation, I feel like it's something that I'm trying. I'm gonna, one of the next sort of big things that I'm gonna try and like work on is just having a mouth animation style that's much more interesting than what I currently do, because I've been doing the same like style for like the last like 5 years, and I feel like it's time to kind of move on. And I mean, like hearing what you do, it sounds really interesting. So I'm just sort of thinking, I'm looking at different people's like mouth animation and just sort of thinking, what style do I really like? What style would I be kind of willing to do? I really like what Chris does on Real Life TV. With I think now he actually like erases the mouths and like composites the mouths on obviously afterwards. So I mean, I'd be quite interested in doing that, but I feel like I'd want to do a lot of tests before doing that, before like committing to it, because I don't know if what if I felt like like halfway through animating they have no mouths, and I'm like, oh yeah, crap, I've got to actually add all this now, but I don't want to do it,
So does he? So I'm not super familiar with the example you shared, but does he like have a head for when the mouth is closed and he's erasing the mouth, or he's like literally erasing the mouth and then putting a digital mouth on later?
I'm not sure if he might. I think he does occasionally have like I think he will have like the head that's with the mouth, but throughout like the rest of the dialogue, I think he just has like a copy of the another copy of the head, but it's just I might be wrong. I think either he does like have like two copies, or he has like.
Well, that's what I did. Yeah, I had two
Yeah.
two copies of each head. One had the mouth taken off, and one had the smile still on.
Oh,
And you can go the route of like, and it's a bit costly, and it doesn't necessarily work very well. Like different prints.
Like that's like, I think you did that in Atlas, right? Because I think that was printed with the kind of the mouth animation and the expressions.
Yeah,
And
it often ends up looking jittery, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It can kind of match the style. But
I watched that one the other day. I kind of didn't mind it for what it was, but it wasn't like, it didn't jump out to me as something I really would want, I guess.
I like the idea of doing it physically, all right.
I have kind of thought in the past of like, what if you tried doing something like Robot Chicken, where you literally just like do with paper?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, like a paper mouth.
Robot Chicken have done Brickfilms.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely an approach that, like, if it's something you enjoy and it fits with that style that you're going for, I'd say like try it and see what you think.
The thing is, that's the thing, isn't it? Like, if I'm trying to do something that's more serious, it's like you don't want to have like a Robot Chicken style.
I know. I don't think that style would work for serious. But of course, one of the problems with doing that for Lego is that the mouths on the minifigures' heads are absolutely tiny.
Yeah.
It looked pretty funny. There's definitely some interesting like different ways to attempt it, and it makes me wonder if there's like a method that nobody has really tried yet that everyone just hasn't thought of. I'm not sure what that would be, but I wonder if it exists.
Yeah, I think just sort of thinking then of like, how they would do it in, something like Leica or something. Obviously, they would just have like these replaceable mouth sections, don't they? Where they just like add it on. But this is like there's literally no way you could do that with Brickfilms, I guess.
Not really. And I feel like I know that if I was doing a bunch of head replacements, I'd get super hung up on like between each frame replacing the head. I'd want to make sure that it's oriented facing exactly the same way, and the hair has to face like go from frame to frame, be exactly the same. That would take way too long, I think.
That's why I like the concept of like movement through talking, because it has to be a little different this time. You can hide.
I'm not a big fan of like the idea of not being able to edit it in post, because I feel like it's like the mouth animation is something that you want to focus on solely, rather than I don't think you want to be having to do all of that extra work whilst also making sure that it's well animated at the same time. It seems like a lot of stuff you're having to do, a lot of multitasking.
Well, what I'd do would be like make a file where you have all the mouth frames like lined up. Maybe you could make a video with just the mouth moving, and you'd know which shape has to come in the next frame, so that you wouldn't have to think about it. You just check your reference file and see what's next. But that's theoretical though. I'd rather not do that.
I'd still go back to the point of just literally encouraging people, if you don't need dialogue, just don't do it. If you can avoid it, I'd really encourage people just to kind of skip around it. Maybe like take your script and see, can I tell this without words? Or can I like use half as many words as I'm going to use and get the point across in the same way, where it's just as funny or just as potent or moving or whatever, and do that.
That actually reminds me, because you said you went to film school, right?
Yes.
Because I went to film school as well. Like, were you ever pressured to like when you've got like your group project and stuff, like to like have as like little dialogue as possible? Because that was something that was like a running theme for like with us, like with our films. It was always like,
I know some people would really be into the show don't tell. And it's like, I mean, no, you can have great dialogue. I mean, but just like, I can't recall being super pressured in group projects to not have dialogue. And I do know there was one writing class where I think they talked more about the show don't tell thing. But yeah, I can't say I was super pressured.
In animation, I mean, I've always just kind of felt this just in general, but like after going into film school, 3 years of it, and like doing like live action work and all that kind of stuff. When it comes to stuff like actually, making stuff, at least outside of the actual just editing, I much prefer just like, I don't know, being able to animate, and just like the lack of like limitations and the kind of inconveniences of like real life. And I don't know, I feel like there is this sort of side of going into live action, especially if you come from a background of doing stop motion, or just animation in general, where there is no real limit. Like your kind of like creativity is the limit, kind of, in a lot of ways. You're going into a world where you're having to, like, everything is real, everything's physical. You can't like.
Yeah.
And there's all these kind of, I don't know, like the legal side of things, or the paperwork, all the stuff, and it's just like, I don't know. I mean,
it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's horrifying. I think because we're so used to like, okay, this is my project. I'm working on it in this dark room with this computer and this setup, and maybe the only outside help I'm getting is other voice actors and some feedback from friends, and maybe some visual effects help from somebody, So we're so used to that controlled environment, and you have to have a controlled environment to do a brick film properly. It's near impossible to do stuff outside. It's not impossible. I know there are brick filmers who've done that sort of stuff and pulled it off, but like, and that, like you're saying, that flip side of live action is just, you realize, oh, I am just a tiny cog in the machine to make this thing come together. I can't do everything. Even as director, if you're putting on multiple hats, you still have to let go of a lot of control and realize there's a lot of stuff you can't change, and you got to rely on other people to do it.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think definitely something that I felt going into film. I feel like, looking at it reflectively, at the 3 years of my experience, I kind of feel like if I went into it with a specific idea in mind of, oh yeah, I want to be a cinematographer, I want to be an editor, whatever it was, other than just kind of like, I want to try things, it probably would have been a very different experience, because I kind of went into it kind of like naively thinking, oh yeah, I just want to kind of play around and just see what I like, and
yeah,
because I feel like, as a brick filmer, I've had some experience on like each thing, but it's really, I didn't know like enough of one specific thing to really be kind of like confident in it, especially when it comes to translating it into live action. And yeah, I spent like 3 years kind of thinking to myself, like, what's I don't know, where am I going with this? And,
yeah, there's a lot of different aspects to it too that you kind of have to like decide on. And it can be
only recently did I kind of like come to the conclusion that cinematography is not my thing. And like I'm now kind of like trying to go into like editing as a career, because that's the only kind of side of it that I feel like I can translate all the stuff that I've learned from brick filming. Really, it kind of like, you can kind of translate it pretty much entirely, whatever the project is. And I feel like, yeah, in that, if I look at it that way, I kind of I guess that's what I want to do.
Yeah, editing is that thing where it's like, I respect, because I do video editing kind of on the side, but it's one of those things where I really respect people who can do it well, because I feel like it's one of those, and there are many elements in filmmaking, I think, that kind of have the same quality, but editing has that special quality where I'd say the majority of the time, the less the viewer consciously notices about the editing, the better the editor has done his job.
Yeah, like that's like one of my favorites, like, sort of sayings when it comes to editing. It's like, it's a great editing is what you don't see. And I guess it's similar, in a similar way to like sound design as well. It's like, it's that stuff that you don't necessarily hear, but it's just so essential. I mean, that's what I love about, like, I don't know, doing stuff like the podcast and stuff. It's like the comparison of like the the raw files to the edited thing. It's just like, so different. And I think people probably might get this false idea that we're just really like we never stall and we're always just kind of like, you know, we're just like really good at improvising, and really it's just no, it's a lot of editing is involved.
It's true.
Yeah, it's great though, because you need that flow. If you don't got that flow, it's just not as good. And I think I've heard a couple podcasts where you have, like, it's very apparent they didn't sit through this to edit it. You just kind of hear those really like long pauses, and you're wondering, what did it stop? What's going on?
Yeah, I got that fast.
But actually, I want to mention about you were talking about dialogue, because I think this particularly pertains to brick filming. It's not that dialogue is in any way bad in and of itself, but
no, yeah, I should mention that as well. I don't think it's like an evil of filmmaking.
It's just that it's very easy to fall into the trap of just having dialogue and then ignoring filmmaking because everything is just done through dialogue, and you know, especially people doing brick films, like younger people or whatever. Like, you can often just have films that they're not very engaging because there's no visual storytelling going on to complement the dialogue. It's just all all people standing around talking. It's very easy for that to become boring.
There is a lot, you know, it really is very dependent on, you know, what film you're trying to make. And obviously, some of the best scene, you know, there are some things in, like, you know, in cinema and just films in general, like some of the best things best things ever made, maybe just like, you know, just long dialogue scenes, whatever. But I know
Quentin Tarantino's the big one. All the film students were always like, oh,
but I do think that when you are like, if you know, whatever you're making, like if you are making something that's got a lot of dialogue or doesn't have a lot of dialogue, whatever, I feel like something that you've always got to keep in mind when you're, you know, in the script writing process is how much can I convey visually, how can I enhance this dialogue, or how much can I enhance the story with the visuals, the way I'm going to kind of like, you know, the way that either me or the cinematographer is gonna, you know, kind of like orchestrate it, you know.
But of course, you know, like people might look at somebody like Quentin Tarantino and think, oh well, Tarantino can just have long dialogue scenes and people like them, then why can't I? But you know, Tarantino, he always works with a really good cinematographer, and you know, there's all sorts of things going into keeping it engaging visually.
Yes, yeah. I think that's why I like encourage people again to kind of go back to their scripts and be like how much can I take out and this still works? And then maybe that can influence too how much you're going to put back into it, or how you're going to I think, again, we were talking about editing earlier. It's just that encouragement of like really like ripping apart the thing you made. Because I feel like the more pre-planning you do before shooting or animating, or just even recording dialogue, right? Like, the better your thing can be. And I get sometimes you don't have that much time, or you're just like, I'm going to lose interest if I don't push ahead to this next stage of development. But like, if you can really like, it's that thing of like letting go and not being afraid to fail and not being afraid to like tear apart the thing you just made and like rebuild it into something else. It's like, if you can have kind of push through that, like, oh, you'll be surprised what you can come up with.
Yeah, definitely. I think as well, like, one of the underrated things, I guess, when it comes to like brick films, and something that people may not necessarily think too much about, is obviously what makes great dialogue, what makes it land is great acting. And I think maybe there needs to be more of a push for like brick filmers to be kind of directors in a way when it comes to voice acting.
Yeah, that's a huge challenge in itself.
It is, yeah.
Because how do you voice direct over a Discord DM? It can be a bit of a challenge.
I mean, something that like, a good couple of years ago now, I was doing some voice acting, and it's funny the amount of people that ask me to voice act. It must just be because I'm British, because I'm not a good voice actor. I don't get it. Like, I don't have a dynamic range. I just do this voice, and like that's about it. But anyway, I was asked to do this to sort of join this voice call like years ago, where basically there were like the two of us, and there's like three of us, and you had like the guy that was was like sort of directing us, and we were actually we were reading the lines out together, and ever since I've been really I've always really liked the idea of like doing a voice call and just like bringing the voice actors together. Is actually something that I'm hoping to do for my next Outman film, is to actually to get voice actors together and get them to kind of like, act out. I mean, obviously it really does depend on whether your voice actors are happy to do that, because
of course, yeah.
I could totally understand not wanting to do that,
because they're already like volunteering their talents for free, which is already like an amazing gift in itself. Like, oh my gosh, Jay Silver.
Oh god, yeah.
I got to gush about him for a second, just because I'm so thankful for him being able to be in Cookie Calamity, and I think he was in That's the Way It Goes. Yeah, like that was just so like when people can like donate their talents in that way, it's just
wasn't he the smiling guy and That's the Way It Goes?
Yes.
Yeah, and the line delivery there is so funny. It's absolutely it makes the joke land so well.
I'll be forever grateful for Jay Silver for like voice acting in like nearly all of my like older films, and the amount that he elevated so much of it. Like I was rewatching, I think it's like the other day, some of my like early Outman films, and they feel quite like they're showing their age a little bit. But Jay Silver, like his voice acting, it just makes it that much better. He's just so, oh god, it's his performance is just like so good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, another great one is like Mind Game. Like,
oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, there are some people who they just, I guess, they have a better handle on like where to put the emphasis on words or whatever. But yeah, it is kind of strange how it's not more common for people to get in calls to sort of direct voice actors, because like I've heard about it, only very occasionally happening in Brickfilm, but it seems so obvious in hindsight. Like previously you'd send off a script and you just kind of be thinking, well, I hope it comes back sounding okay.
Yeah. Sometimes you get things you weren't expecting, and I feel like it kind of helps. Like when I sent Harrison Allen the script. So Harrison Allen, Annoying Noises Productions, just in case nobody knows. But when I sent him the script for The Executioner, I didn't say anything about like an accent, and he kind of came back with, I guess, a bit of a British accent. I don't know. It may be completely inaccurate, so correct me if I'm wrong. And I was like more thinking, okay, just stick to an American accent for this, because my mindset was just like, oh, they're all in America, so I guess they'd all be American, whatever. And he comes back with his accent, and I'm like, I'm not sure if this works, but he was like really insistent. Like he's like, no, I think this works for this character, because I had even shown him the minifigure and everything. He's like, it would be perfect. And I was like, okay. And I even played around with the sound file a bit to try to bring the voice, make it sound more muffled, kind of behind a hood. And it worked really well in the end. I'm pretty happy with it. So sometimes you get happy accidents with not giving that direction, but those aren't as common as not getting what you want.
I do like the idea of, getting voice actors to bounce off each other and kind of like, react in real time to like, the way that they inflected and, whatever. Like that kind of something that's really missing in brick filming, I think, that's, something that you could translate from live action to brick filming, I think.
Yeah, it's certainly worth considering. It's worth keeping in mind as a possibility, getting people on a call and actually talking with them.
It is quite complicated when it's like a big cast. You don't,
Well, I mean, I don't think you'd have to get everyone together all at once.
20 people, one room.
But another thing, brick filmers are often quite averse to spending money. And this, I mean, I've paid for some voiceovers for videos, but like long voiceovers, but I've never actually paid for voice acting. But I think that that's another thing people should actually keep in mind, to be like going to Fiverr and actually paying for like really high quality voice actors.
I know Rio Force, I think he did that with his Ninjago, I think it was Ninjago Gardens animation. He got like, I think I think it was like a Japanese voice actress, and maybe there was a Japanese voice actor too, but he paid them to like perform in Japanese. And it was just like, oh, that's kind of cool.
That is cool, yeah. And it can really make a film better. But of course, if you have really good voice acting, the animation of the characters has to match. You can't
That's
be
the
lazy.
thing, isn't it?
Yeah. If the voice acting's good,
Like,
you absolutely cannot be
man.
lazy, or else it ruins the whole film.
I need Jay to carry this animation for me because I'm just not feeling it today.
I mean, there's nothing more like disheartening than like, you know, you get like a great performance by Jay Silver, but the animation is just a picture.
Yeah, it doesn't work at all.
Oh man, yeah, it happens, you know.
I'm thinking perhaps we should move to the Brickfilm Showcase.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
It's been so long
Yeah,
since we've done a showcase. Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
there's a lot of
literally, yeah.
stuff we talked about too that we can hit on kind of again with those picks.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, totally.
So, for those of you new to the podcast, the showcase is an opportunity for each of us to talk about brick films that either mean a lot to us or that we just want to talk about in general.
So my entry is Lego Sheep by Maxime Marion, and I was just going through because, as is quite often the case with the showcase, we get to like the last hour before we start recording the podcast, and we're like, we still haven't picked our entries yet, and I was just like, what should I talk about? You know, that I haven't talked about before, and I was actually really surprised that I hadn't actually talked about Sheep, because I feel like this is like one of my favorite brick films from like the last like few years, and I really could have sworn that we talked about this one, but yeah, I just really love this film. It's I mean, I don't know if either of you are familiar. Well, I guess you are. Like Shaun the Sheep.
Yeah.
By Armin,
Yeah.
and it kind of you know, it does make me think of that quite a lot. But I just really love like the animation. I love the designs of the sheep. I think they're really cute, and I actually really like the music and everything, the way that it goes with everything, and I think as well with like Maxime Marion as well, like with other stuff he's done, like the Henry and Edmund films, like Copyright. You know, he's got some of the best like production values of like any brick filmer. Like everything is just like so professionally done. Like everything's just so sort of top notch. And yeah, just a really nice sweet film. I really enjoy.
Yeah, the colors in it are gorgeous too. I there's one of the shots when he's walking somewhere, but you just see in the sky, it's like at sunset, and you can just tell like the back of that set is like lit up in a way that really like it adds this depth to that world that is very hard to achieve for most brick filmers, myself included. Where it's just you can sense the horizon off in the distance, and it just really opens that world up in a way it's like I said, it's hard to do that.
It is hard to do that. Yeah, I mean, most of us are using like flat paper or something as the sky, but you know, in shooting outdoor scenes now, I'm thinking to myself like, I want the sky to be luminous. You know, it should have its own light to it, but it's very hard if it's just paper or something.
Yeah, sometimes people are limited by their space.
Sometimes
also.
people will make the sky with a really powerful light and a gel, which looks great, pointed at a wall or something. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
You can continue talking about the film.
Yeah, I think just to bounce off what William said, kind of, I love kind of going back to the topic of kind of like sincerity in animation. There's like a lot. You can sense kind of the soul of the animator in this brick film. I feel like there's a lot of him or them. I don't know if this was multiple people who animated and worked on it. Okay, yeah, I think it was characters and set design were by Klou, Kloou. I don't know how to pronounce that. I don't want to butcher it. And then Maxime Marion directed and animated it. So I think in a way, if there's a separate person doing characters and set design, you know, and someone else is animating it, I guess you're kind of in a sense seeing both those people kind of come out in that product, which is nice to think about. But yeah, it's just there's something there with going back to what we were saying, kind of that you can probably like skim through this and just see and pick out, like we're talking principles of animation. I can't think of any specifically, just kind of going through it right now, like kind of seeing in the way they move, like maybe finding things there, but then again, kind of that, like I said, paired with the kind of like the sincerity, it's just, it's really nice.
Of course, we have to mention the great use of the printed eyes.
Oh yeah.
Conveying the expressions and emotions visually. And
just the fact it's not minifigures.
Yeah, that's true too. You couldn't do that with a minifigure.
Anything brick built is like, I mean, it's. I don't know if I'd say it's. I mean, maybe it's more of a risk. Yeah, I guess I'd say it's more of a risk to do that because you may fail in the sense that it's not as connecting to people. Like, but you also, like, if you succeed with it, like in the case of this film, you just you go so much farther than like it wouldn't work with minifigures for obvious reasons. So I mean, like a sheep costume minifigure.
I do think that there is something quite unique about like anything that's like non minifigure based. Is there's so much more you can do so much. There's so much more like you can do, like so many more like possibilities creatively, because you take it for granted, but like we're quite spoiled as brick filmers in the fact that we get to have all of these like pre-made designs,
costumes,
pre-made figures and everything. Everything is just like that's a kind of luxury that no other like stop motion animator gets. So with anything that's not a brick minifigure based, you're actually giving yourself more, you're giving yourself more work, but you're also giving yourself more like opportunities to just really experiment and do something completely new, and I just really love the sheep design. It's really cool. I think I guess I really like.
But of course, it also still has that recognizable Lego-iness to it, by not just being a pre-made mold. The fact that it's made of a bunch of more basic blocks that can move around.
There is a minifigure in this too. I guess we should mention, like the man on the TV screen is in it. I guess that counts. I don't know.
I'd still call it a non-minifig brick film, though.
Yeah, because I mean the main focus of it is, non-minifigure. So I'd say, say it counts.
Yeah, I'd say it's a good one to study. I guess this may be paired with Paganimation. He's done a couple with like just those huge like
little guys.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Those two. I wasn't even thinking of those. I was thinking of the ones he did where he had like the
Pagano puppets.
Sounds like the yeah.
Country building. Yeah. Really good one.
Oh man.
Oh, country. I love country building. And I mean, one of my all-time favorite brick films, possibly my favorite brick film, is Robota, which is this like absolutely insanely massive scale, brick film. That's they're all robots and completely new designs, and I mean we have talked about it in the showcase, going back like 3 years ago now, but
showcase recap.
It's always a good time to talk about Robota.
There's never a bad time to talk about Robota. It's a fantastic film.
I think Robota it genuinely is possibly the best brick film ever made.
It's been years since I've seen it. I need to go back and rewatch it.
I'd say that Robota is easily the best brick film ever made, along with pretty much everything by Maxime.
Yes, that's true. And Maxime has been posting, updates about Henri and Edmund 4, so obviously that's very exciting.
Oh,
really?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I loved, like for him as a brick filmer, I think he's one of those people that like he's able to. Like, again, talking about the whole sincerity and emotion and all that, like, actually, like, stir something inside you as a viewer, which is, like, it's hard to do with Lego. So that's always very impressive.
Yeah, I've always especially been impressed by copyright. Like, I feel like he has the exact right balance between it being goofy and fun and Lego-y, but also he can hit some sincere emotion.
Because there's that scene where they talk they're like looking at the sunset and they're like sitting on top of the car, I think it was, and it was just like, wow, you're doing things I didn't think you could do.
I mean, that's actually a great example of great dialogue in brick films. So.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, I guess if you want to get good at dialogue as a brick filmer, that's a great kind of scene to analyze, because you get that great. Not only is the dialogue, brilliant, but also you can see how much is elevated through I guess the performances, but also the cinematography as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's great sort of scene to study.
Yeah.
But I guess Penta, I guess it goes to your pick.
Okay, so I decided to pick a film called The Great Invention by Crazy Ed. And sometimes people come along in brick filming and it seems like they don't make a lot of like sort of major long-term giant projects, but they release a lot of tests or unfinished films like what this is. Or just very short works, but everything they make is like so unique and inventive and idiosyncratic that like every single scrap that they release is worth checking out. And that's totally the case with this, which is it's called an unfinished film, but to me it feels more complete and better than a lot of finished brick films. And it's just a film with this fantastic visual style and set design and animation and everything. And of course, another thing about Crazy Ed is he was the type of brick filmer to always be extremely hard on his own work. Always just say, "Oh, this is terrible. Oh, this sucks. I gave up on this because it sucked," basically. But and the description of this says that he was totally unhappy with the look of the film overall, which I just find remarkable because I think it looks great, and I think that it really uses the widescreen aspect ratio really well with the set design.
It's such a vibe too. Mm-hmm. It's like there's a very specific feel that you get from watching it. It's just I was happy you chose this because like I hadn't watched anything from him in years. And like because I mean he hasn't made stuff in a really long time. But like I remember at the time he was that guy that was like doing 24 frames per second, if I remember correctly. And that just blows my mind because the thought of animating at that frame rate just sounds insane. But maybe it's not as hard as you think.
Well, I was just about to say he was doing 24 frames per second well. Very few people actually do 24 well if they're using 24.
Yeah, I was actually going to say because it's something that kind of crossed my mind was that this is an example of smooth animation that is actually fantastic. That's actually brilliant. Because sometimes, that is a phrase that is tossed around a little, a little too much. It's like smooth. But this is actually like brilliant smooth animation. And it's
like we're contradicting ourselves a lot in this episode, which is great because it's kind of like going from like, okay, smooth animation isn't the goal. But
the thing is, it's possible.
Dialogue you don't always need, but
it's possible to have smooth animation that's bad, and it's possible to have smooth animation that's good. This is good animation that just so happens to also be smooth.
That's the thing. That's
just its style.
It's not just about the. It's not just about like the the style that you're doing. It's the results of that style, and it's definitely an example of great animation that happens to be smooth. But no, I mean this is actually a really great film. Doesn't seem to be unfinished at all in my eyes. And what I really love about it is it has this great like color palette where it's like there's only like a couple of like things within each shot that are actually in color. And I don't know whether he did that physically with the like Lego or whether he did that in post, but it's a really cool style that really gets like the main things to really pop out, and it's a really cool film, and the aesthetic, just the whole thing, and actually something that's quite interesting. The top comment on here is actually you, Walter.
Yeah, I saw that. It's funny. It's like 6 years ago, I think. Yeah, 6 years ago.
Yeah, I didn't notice that until after I'd already picked it. I thought that was funny, all right. But yeah, as you said, this film has a its own vibe to it. I feel like it's very unusual. It's in the way the characters move and the way everything looks, and just sort of how it shoots the set. It feels like it's excited to show everything that it shows.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of elements too, just like set design, composition, lighting, just kind of moving across the screen too. That just like all kind of interplay in a way that's really beautiful. I love the shot where I think it's like where they kind of like descend the staircase.
Yeah. That's such a standout, yeah.
Just the way he moves is so funny.
The way it uses the width of the screen and the way the two characters move differently to each other, which we always like to see.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. It can get so boring when everyone's just walking with the same walk cycle. But I fall victim to that so much. I do that way too much. Like I want to change that up at some point.
But yeah, I totally think that it's still unusual and worth a look for people. It's kind of weird to be talking about something from 2014 as if it's old. It feels weird to me now.
Yeah, I feel like he's one brick film or two who never really blew up in the way he deserved to. Like I think the most views he has on his channel is like 23K. Okay, 84K on The Bird.
The Bird's really good as well.
Everyone should check out. Yeah, but like there's that thing where I feel like he kind of like I'm sad there wasn't more recognition for him.
But yeah, as I was saying, like he was the type of brick filmer who just kind of threw out scraps, but everything was so good.
Gourmet scraps.
And yeah, I certainly love to see him return to brick filming.
Yeah. Maybe he's listening to this. I don't know. Come back. We want you.
I mean, you came back, so anything's possible.
It is, yes. Who knows who may return.
But yeah, I guess go over to your pick, which I know that Penta is quite a fan of.
Yeah, this was one that I think I had seen years ago. So this one wasn't as influential earlier on for me, but I think I saw it later on, and I forgot about it, and I think I saw it again, and I forgot about it, because it's such a good brick film. It just kind of would for some reason, it wouldn't stick in my memory. And I rewatched it earlier this year. Some people had brought it up, and we rewatched it, and I was like, dang, this is so good.
Oh, by the way, this is Major Malfunction.
Oh yeah, that's worth
yeah. We should say what it is. Major Malfunction by MisterMulluc. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Not sure.
Yeah, I think so.
But it's great short. The use of I know some people have maybe different opinions on using copyrighted music in brick films, but I feel like this is one of those examples where using a Billy Joel
so
song
good.
just fits so well for what the short is and what's being told. And there's just so much personality in the way the characters move.
Yeah.
And it just, for back then too, there's something with just I don't know what it is. Like we're talking about kind of being spoiled nowadays with stuff. If someone does something really well and it's just amazing, so many amazing elements are put into it, and it looks super, fresh, good color, 4K. You almost don't appreciate it as much as the older stuff where they're just doing these insane animations and flips and running around and just these elements that are, I don't know, you admire it more, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Because it was probably harder back then.
Yeah, no, I get what you mean.
But, this actually ties into something we were just talking about with, how you can have good animation, that doesn't necessarily mean it's smooth, or you can have smooth animation, that doesn't necessarily mean it's good. This is, one of the most, animatorly brick films ever made. I think it's in the running. You could call this the best animated brick film of all time, and it's not the smoothest animated, but it's the character of the animation, the way everyone moves, and just the physics of everything, and it aims to be cartoony, and it nails it every single time, every single shot and motion of everything.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt in my mind. This is 100% a cartoon. It's just
oh yeah.
I don't think there was anything quite like this when it came out.
No way.
And I feel like this really kind of.
Yeah.
I think it probably had quite an impact. Do you say with
Absolutely.
How we view that kind of stuff now? This is
I call this one of my top 5 favorite brick films of all time, and when this, but about the time when this came out, I mean, I kind of wasn't hugely active at the time, but upon getting back into brick filming, it was this and Joni Phillips, known as Just Kidding at the time in brick filming, those were the two influences where I was like, oh, you could animate Lego like and actually, give them character and, put thought and effort into the animation. Like before that, it was just sort of like you'd move the arm just because you had to move them while they were talking. It's very boring and like just trying to get through it. But this absolutely blew my mind. It was like, oh my god, there's so much more you can do. You can put character into everything.
It's amazing. I think like you mentioned physics. There's that moment where like the robot creature thing is just like shoving between one person against the wall and like pushing the other guys pushing back, and you're just like you're feeling like the physical aspect of that like going back and forth. And I think that's one thing with animation, if you can like kind of feel it as you're seeing it, like the animator's doing something very right.
Yeah, you can feel it. Yeah, that's a big deal
on a like conceptual level as well. I mean, I guess you were talking in the past about like how I guess it's quite funny actually with all our picks. They all happen to be dialogue free, which kind of we'll talk about a lot anyway. But like, I feel like
that's just a coincidence as well. But oftentimes we have coincidences.
I also think that all three of them are like amazingly well animated, like 10 out of 10. But I do think as well, like what I love about this is, and this is something that I've heard a lot in the past about, like when it comes to like storytelling and world building and stuff. Sometimes you don't like have to over explain things, and they just sort of throw this onto us, like the whole thing of like this robot that's just attacking them. You don't really need to know more than that for it to just work. And it does. There's no kind of like do you know what I mean? It kind of like sometimes good storytelling doesn't have to explain everything.
It's just this is what's going on.
Yeah.
But you were mentioning
there's robots now. Okay.
You're mentioning like if this had influence, but over the years, plenty of times I've seen people like doing animation, or you can tell that they're going out of their comfort zone. They're trying to make things more interesting and like cartoony, and it's very common when people start doing that. You see that they have a character with a hat that wobbles around on the character's head, and every time I see that, I'm like, yeah, they were influenced by Malfunction. That expanded their mind. And I did that in Horace and Horace's Day Out. There's a character with a top hat, and occasionally it's like sort of not perfectly affixed to his head, and that was directly from Major Malfunction.
Yeah. There's that thing where it's like, okay, you want to make more cartoony brick films, you're gonna need that sticky tack,
and you're gonna need to watch this film and understand why it's so good.
A lot of masking, because there's so much that you need to do that. Because I was, I think on older brick films that I'd worked on, like I never used rigs or any out of socket army animations or anything really with like sticky tack to move things around. And when you don't have access to those things, you're not gonna be able to make things move like that.
That's true too. Yeah. We are spoiled in brick filming that we don't have to use rigs for characters, but at the same time, it's a bit of a limitation to not be using them.
You want it to be good. Yeah, like I couldn't do. I think with the past 3 brick films I released, like I could not animate what I animated if I didn't have those elements. Like you can't make the minifigure jump if you're not gonna. I mean, I guess you could hypothetically try to do something with like him being on top of bricks and angling it in a way that you can mask it out later, but it just wouldn't be as easy as like having a rig or something that's just kind of like holding that minifigure up and levitating him and allowing you to kind of make those movements with gravity and physics and whatnot.
But yeah, I feel like I could watch this film 100 times and it wouldn't get old. And yeah, it's always the first thing I point to, if I want to show somebody what good animation actually is, it's Major Malfunction.
Yeah, and it's so funny because this is I was literally so close to picking this myself, and I was like, oh yeah, should I do that? And then you're like, you're so close. Yeah, it was like my second pick.
I'm actually amazed we haven't talked about it before. Like, when it was picked, I was sort of thinking, did we not already talk about it?
I thought you guys might have already. I had to ask. I was like, did you guys already?
I think we talked about First Class by MisterMulluc, which is also really good.
Yeah, I think we may have talked about this a bit then, but yeah, not like.
Yeah, I'm sure when we talked about First Class, we probably also went over Major Malfunction, but yeah. it's totally worth showcasing on its own.
We do like to talk about you know, other brick films when we're talking about the showcase, so we probably did. But and it's kind of funny because both of my our picks, The Ghost Sheep and this, are films like, wait, we haven't talked about this already? Like, how did we not talk about these already? But yeah, no, it's...
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good way of capping off. You know, it feels like in this discussion we talked a lot about like physics, what people might think is good animation and what it actually is, which might sound a bit elitist, but it's in saying things like that, it's hard to explain everything I mean by saying it, but there's a lot.
Well,
a lot.
That's why we send them away to those fancy pants tutorials.
There's a lot of like underlying ideas and knowledge informing opinion like that.
I do also think as well, like, you know, in these three films, these three picks, there's some very different animation styles, and you know, you can take inspiration from all of them, depending on what style you want to go for. Because I mean, if you do want to go for like a smooth animation style, you know, take some inspiration from The Great Invention, you know, and I'd say, you'll see, if you want to go cartoony, then, you know, I mean, you have to watch Malfunction anyway, you know.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that the three picks we have are all very different styles of animation, but they're all really good. And yeah, one of them is really smooth, but yeah, like,
yeah,
that's not why it's good.
I'd be interested to ask all three of the animators like what influences they had outside of brick filming that influenced the way they animated these shorts.
Well, for sure, Major Malfunction, you know, you can tell by the other uploads on MisterMulluc's channel would have been influenced by traditional animation, because you know, he seems to have done animation in like all sorts of different styles. There's some hand-drawn stuff and clay and even source filmmaker.
I think that's something as well, because I think we've sort of touched on it sort of a little bit in this episode, but I think that you know, you shouldn't be afraid to take influence from outside of brick filming. Yeah, I mean, just because we've got all these kind of advantages of, oh yeah, you know, we can base the characters onto the set, and we can you know, we don't have to like create whole molds or, you know, or like designs for characters or anything. Just because we don't have to do it doesn't mean that we can't occasionally do it, you know, and just play around and I guess broaden the possibilities of what we can do with something that may seemingly seem quite you know, not have much like
But yeah, that's a good point actually. You know, I'd say that a lot of the best brick films ever made are by people whose primary influence at that time isn't coming from other brick films. You know, I'm thinking of like people like Night Owl obviously wasn't just looking at other brick films to make the stuff he was making at the time he was making it. And the same with Major Malfunction. You know, you couldn't get to that animation well, I mean, okay, I guess technically you could, but you know, it would be very unlikely to reach that animation style if all you were seeing was other brick films made before it.
Yeah. I think it's cool to talk about too, because it goes back to the topic of inspiration that we were talking about, and maybe even like going outside of film and animation, seeing like what you see in like the everyday life, like how maybe that has some kind of influence on the way you're animating as well. Kind of really not restricting what you have to be inspired by all the way down to just other brick films, you know, like really like let your mind kind of explode a little bit with, well, what is this thing, this dog walking down the street, the person walking their dog, right, noticing the way they're moving.
Oh,
like,
yeah
maybe that has some influence there. Like there's stuff all around us
for sure,
know?
Taking note of how things move in real life is very useful. But of course, you know, don't get caught staring.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess this is probably a good sort of time to kind of like cap it off, I suppose. I mean, you know, this has just been a great conversation. I mean, I know I say this pretty much every episode, but you know, we could just go on for hours. Yes. I mean, thank you so much for joining us. It's been really great.
Yeah, thank you again for having me.
Thanks. Yeah, it's been great to talk with you. All right. I remember, when That's the Way It Goes came out, I was thinking like, man, this is so good. I can't wait to see what he does next. And of course, the next thing he did was immediately quit brick filming. So I gotta say, I'm very glad to see you come back.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah. Hopefully, I'll make one or two more. We'll see what happens.
Well, I'll be looking forward to them.
And now, and awesome. This is the last we ever hear of Walter Benson. There's no joke.
Just disappeared after that. Don't know what happened to him.
But in all seriousness, this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much, and yeah.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Awesome. Bye.